Taylor. The keynote today is titled Digital Construction and Information Management Strategy. But in speaking to Anne, because of some of the great things I've heard today, I'm taking a few liberties and using the opportunity to kind of reflect back on some of the things that have been said, pick up on some key points about what we've heard today in, I think, an exceptional conference, but exceptional, I think, both in terms of the participants, but also as well as the topics that have been covered and have been extraordinarily helpful for me. And from this, I then want to hit on two commitments I wanted to ask people to make today. For a moment, just put me into context, not because my career matters particularly, because I think it's the journey that we're all on in this world of information management that really matters. My background, I chartered engineer, and I began my studies actually for engineering just as calculators took over from slide rules. Now, I know this might sound ancient, does sound ancient actually, and in terms of technology, it certainly is. But all the same fears about job losses then as there are today about AI. But in those days, we worked on drawing boards, physical paper. Information was very kind of tangible, very slow moving, and incredibly hard to coordinate across large teams or major complex projects. I've kind of spent my role in my career in roles across consultancies and public sector, although I did start out in contracting. I've worked in some amazing teams, in particular, my last major role was in Crossrail, helping deliver major projects. And what I've witnessed isn't just technological change, though that has been very dramatic, and I'll come on to that and reflect on that in a minute. But I've watched designs migrate from my drawing board into 3D CAD. I've seen projects become very dependent on IT and now utterly dependent on information management. I've watched job descriptions evolve. I've seen new roles emerge, roles disappear, and entire disciplines getting redefined. And then, 15, 20 years ago, we saw BIM, which, make no mistake, did start out as engineering modeling and very much in a technical area, and now has gone and expanded, and the principles of BIM have expanded into full ePMOs, into full digital project management organizations that really, would have been completely unimaginable when I started out. So this technology has made us faster. It's made us more efficient, more capable of handling complexity at a large scale, and that's undeniable progress. I think it's one of the reasons been so interesting listening to discussions and presentations today to see how far we've actually come in all of this, and the importance of defining direction going forward when we do think about the context of strategy and the like. Now, David Hancock, he, I think, set the scene extremely well with all of the NISTA objectives and the 10-year infrastructure plan, the 10-year infrastructure strategy that, no doubt gives us the stability that we need behind any information strategy that we create. I've certainly read the document, and it's good to read. It's worth noting, though, it doesn't actually mention IM directly, but it assumes that all of the requirements embedded in the transforming infrastructure performance roadmap to 2030, which redefined the BIM mandate into the IM mandate that we're talking about today, all of that still stands and is absolutely needed to make all of those things that David was talking about, make it happen. I was particularly caught out actually and struck by some of the key points in the panel sessions on the drivers for change, not just because of the commercial benefits that were being talked about, but also there's a social and environmental returns on investment that they can have. I thought there was some particularly persuasive recognition about the commercial drivers throughout the sessions today, and also on value engineering. Some good points about procurement and the requirements for long-term decision making, focused on the need to make sure contract conditions are actually aligned to long-term needs and whole life, so that the capital works, if you like, can be protected during their life cycle performance, not just that focusing on capex. This drew out the importance of it. Come out today several times about needing to align them to the long-term needs of whole life, so that their capital works are protected. And then I think what was really interesting about how this flowed out into drawing out the importance of information and data in the valuation process, how that derived the benefits, and how this is going to become even more important in the future and in strategies that get developed. We had some, I thought, really amazingly insightful points about what should be happening about educating people, and about information management and who should be first. And I think that's one of the conundrums that we have to face today in trying to move things forward. We're on a kind of, all of us really, in our careers and our work, we're on a continuous journey. I think the panel on why change brought out some interesting points about such as the parallel with trying to embed an IM culture similar to the way we now adopt health and safety, as if it's just, part of living and breathing. So I'd actually suggest that we live in a world that it's actually constantly changing, and you need to be continuously adaptive to that. And that's what makes it harder sometimes to think about creating a strategy for information management. It's really hard to predict the kind of 10-year cycles. I've used 10-year cycles because if I go back to my drawing board days back in and CAD back in the 1980s, we then had internet come along in the 1990s. We had things like enterprise systems and databases. My first involvement in databases, certainly as an engineer, in the early 2000s. The cloud and mobility in the 2010s. I know that the iPhone had only been invented in 2007, 2000, I think it was 2007. iPads hadn't been invented in 2009 when I joined Crossrail. Now we've got big data and AI, where we can start to use digital twins for things like operational intelligence on our assets. It's just amazing and really hard, I appreciate, to predict what the IM journey is going to be, or what a digital construction and IM strategy can be with all that change going on, and not be distracted by this extraordinary new things that keep happening to the technology that changes how we do things. But there is one thing, if I reflect back on all of that stuff, watching technology transform, and I've just got to click a button here, so making sure I don't disappear again. But the one thing I've learned is that actually the important fundamentals about information and its DNA, they don't change. Good information architecture and information strategy in the 1980s meant knowing what data you needed. It meant understanding where it was, who was responsible for it, and for what it was going to be used for. And good information architecture and strategy in 2025 means exactly the same thing. We're just doing it faster and at larger scale with much more sophisticated tools. It does mean to say we can cock it up quicker, but it also means we can make such significant benefits as well. So the discipline of thinking clearly about information, that's constant. We need to ask, why are we doing this, before we ask, how should we do this? And that's constant to me. Recognition that process serves outcome, not the other way around, that's constant as well. So there are these threads of importance that are continuous all through, all through time. So I think that's where I talked about one of two commitments I was looking for each of us to make when we do all of this work, and that is remember why we're doing this, why we do this. Information management frameworks are getting more and more sophisticated, and we know ISO 19650 continues to evolve. It did make me smile today when Terry Stocks reminded me of BS 1192, and I still remember my Crossrail CAD team 16 years ago taking me through all of the workflows in there, what we still use today in ISO 19650. These frameworks and tools that we have today they're amazingly powerful, particularly the tools. But the classic expression about a hammer is only valuable if you're building something with it, not if you're just polishing it up and making it look shiny. When I think about what we can do today digitally, how we can do some amazing things, how we can embed sustainability and social objectives from our project goals into project requirements, how we can then progress them, measure the outcomes, and we're not just checking whether our as-built drawings are correct or not. There are some amazing things that we can now do in these digital hubs that we can create with our digital project environments. And there's an issue for me with that I found interesting, that the role of clients came up a few times as well today, which I think is absolutely right, because it's the way the clients procure the digital environment that we work in that matters. It's the clients who decide whether they want an information strategy for their supply chain to work in, whether they only want to think of the world in terms of CapEx only and minimum viable products, which is right in principle in terms of minimum viable products, but it changes the mindset if you're not careful. Because really they need to be thinking proper terms of whole life costs and that life cycle of assets that got mentioned. So even today, with all our sophisticated processes and tools, I still see clients struggling to understand what on earth OIRs, organizational information requirements, they think they should be using. Or worrying about what AIRs they should be thinking about, let alone the importance of sticking to their naming conventions and standardizing them. And clients still struggle. We might get it, but the clients who create the environment, they do. The IM supply chain of consultants and contractors and vendors for sure. Great solutions, great processes, but from a client perspective, they're often just point solutions. Clients definitely need help in terms of creating strategies, and that's where I think there's still, for me, an awful lot of work for us to do, and good work for us to do in championing IM. So when we go back to our organizations, when we go back to work, when you try to implement the standards, when you pursue qualifications and the like, to me, it's keep your eyes on the outcomes that we're trying to create, not the badges. You have to ask ourselves, are we managing information in a way that reduces risk, that can accelerate or improve delivery, how it creates the actual value that we were discussing earlier. It's all of these sort of things that help our teams work smarter, I think, not just more compliantly. And if we lose sight of that, if IAM simply becomes a compliance exercise, and this was touched on earlier, a bureaucratic layer, something that gets in the way rather than clearing the path and making things better, then we've missed the point entirely. And I think what's worse is that we'll not only lose the intelligent people in the room who would be championing this type of work that we do, we'll lose the confidence of our fellow team members who are increasingly relying on our skills to make things happen with them. So I think particularly in the IM world, we need to be the voice that kind of asks the difficult questions sometimes. And that's what I'm hoping, in the first thing that we would do. Ask, when a framework gets more complex, thinking, does this actually serve the goals of what we're trying to achieve? When we talk about certification and getting ISO certified, just because we can or for the sake of it, we need to ask why. I often remember clients back in the early days of quality management turning around to their supply chain. You need to be certified. I'm not going to get it though. But so we need to ask these questions. Why? It's being the person who remembers that information management exists to make things better, faster, and smarter, not just creating another administrative level. So it's focusing on on pragmatic process over perfection, which is important to me. The second commitment that I would have really be asking for you today is to get your support, join nima, and support the Information Management Initiative. The UK's government, I've got all sorts of thoughts about this, but bluntly, the information management mandate represents something genuinely ambitious. Okay, I know it started in this kind of mandate started 2016 for BIM, for sure, but now what we're seeing is much broader and much greater challenge. It is, as we've heard, about embedding rigorous information management across the sectors, across the industries, across the entire way in which we deliver public and commercial outcomes. So it's about positioning information management as an essential enabler, I think, for infrastructure and certainly to meet David's strategy targets. And it's essential because it's essential for us to ensure we can, in these major projects, address the climate challenges, the social productivity issues, that we can, and ultimately the built environment future needs. And we can do that if we structure our IM and our goals and our requirements correctly. It's all transformative work, and that's what nima is championing: the framework, the standards, the disciplines, and that's why it is genuinely important. I've spent, 40 years in my career watching processes and how we do things, and to try and do it myself. And I know that if we talk about a maturity curve, it just continues to mature, continues to curve. And this transformation, it isn't a quick fix, but actually a lot of it can't happen without you, without us, who we work on these things. nima exists to champion information management and has been asked to develop this mandate, to make it real, to push it forward. And it's not easy. nima creates platforms and channels that that facilitate, they make connecting and sharing as a community. It's great for sharing lessons, and it provides free practical guidance on all sorts of things that help with developing digital strategies or sorting out the detail. I know that because I use the stuff every day in the work I do, and I see the need for an organization like nima to promote these best practices, to provide the free guidance and enhance information management. And that's nima, that's what they do. But they can't do it alone, and they need your support. So it's really quite simple, because it's got such a lot of benefit for you. So I'm asking you to become a member of nima yourself. And actually, in all of this, perhaps even more importantly, is to take the conversation back to your organizations and explore patron membership with your boards, and I think particularly with your organization leadership. Because that's actually where the mandate really gets embedded, when it becomes a business as usual rather than a nice to have. And that was touched on in the conference earlier today. We heard the IMI encourages organizations to create their own organization-wide mandates, to each set the sort of information principles and rules that they need and that your organizations will need to try and achieve the outcomes that you and your businesses need to work for them. And if you go back to the first principles I mentioned about why we do that stuff, that's where I see it can all come together. And actually, I think that's what's in it for you as well, where you can make a difference in your organization. Use nima to help you with that message that the IMI is not just a compliance burden, but it's going to give you and your organization real competitive advantage when you do it right. So we need that institutional commitment alongside individual passion, and participation in nima for me isn't just membership, it's about contributing, helping to shape standards. So really just trying to bring my time up to an end here. I believe in it completely, and that it'll all work if we stay rooted into what it's actually all about. So please think about joining nima. At that point, Paul, I will hand back to you now, because I know I've kind of overrun time and I don't want my world to suddenly disappear like that. But it's been a real privilege today. So thanks for allowing me the opportunity to sit down with tea all day and watch everybody say some amazing things. So
thank you, Malcolm.